Plastic already in the oceans and environment, with millions of kilos of plastic trash added daily, cannot be easily removed. A new device that removes plastic from rivers before the plastic enters oceans is a needed technology. But if it fails to become part of what must become a comprehensive attack against plastic pollution, then it will achieve little. The flow of plastic from certain rivers adds to the enormous daily flow of plastic into the oceans. Removing plastic from these rivers before the plastic enters into the oceans is an important step in the plastic pollution removal effort. But an even more important step, which keeps getting ignored by the many well-funded organizations concerned with ocean cleanups and plastic pollution, is the failure to remove plastic along coastlines and other areas that can only be removed by human labor. There is no technology that can remove plastic from coastlines, mangroves, riverbanks, and land-based areas. In many developing countries, the source of most plastic pollution entering into the oceans, there is massive poverty and a ready labor force of millions of people desperate for work. Employing disadvantaged people to remove plastic pollution is straightforward and effective. In many developing countries, few can afford to be volunteers. Plastic pollution needs a sustained effort for its removal that only an employed workforce can achieve. There is a role for technology and for volunteers to play in the fight against plastic pollution. But as long as people keep expecting technology to save the day, or that plastic pollution can be removed on the cheap by relying on volunteers alone, then the plastic pollution problem will only get worse. Employed labor is the most effective way to remove plastic pollution from coastlines, mangroves, riverbanks, forests, and many other areas, and it means paying a fair wage. Most plastic pollution is not recyclable. Paying people only for recyclable plastic that they recover shortchanges them and the environment. People need stable employment, and the environment needs all of the plastic trash removed, not just the minority of trash that is recyclable. Interventions that do not pay a fair, consistent wage are not effective in removing plastic from the environment. To think most of the plastic pollution originates from certain rivers fails to recognize the enormous amounts of plastic that goes directly into the oceans from coastal communities and coastal cities. The dumping of waste, including plastic, directly into the oceans also continues in many places. Many ships, fishing boats, and so forth dump their trash directly into the oceans. There are many locations where plastic trash on land ends up in the oceans by forces of nature. Winds, storms, and so forth carry enormous amounts of land-based trash into the oceans. The enormous amount of plastic waste entering oceans daily from coastal communities and cities must not be underestimated. A large amount of plastic entering into rivers originates in the communities living along these rivers. It is commonplace in many developing countries for people living along rivers to dump their plastic trash and other trash directly into rivers because they have no place else for the plastic trash to go. Likewise, the plastic waste of hundreds of millions of people living in coastal areas often have their plastic waste go directly into the oceans. Even if all the plastic that flows into oceans from rivers can be stopped, there will still be millions of kilos of plastic flowing daily into the oceans from coastal communities and cities. You can refer to a December 13th, 2016 YouTube video under my name called Coastal Communities and the Failure to Save Oceans from Garbage, which shows the plastic waste from just one small community, from one small coastal community. There's a huge problem in so many coastal communities where there's no proper removal and disposal of plastic waste, and so the plastic of literally millions of people ends up going into the oceans daily. Plastic is everywhere, even in the poorest of communities. In many impoverished areas, there is no waste management and nowhere to put plastic trash. The dumping of plastic into rivers and oceans will continue as long as the plastic addiction continues, combined with the lack of proper ways to properly dispose of plastic. Most plastic, including plastic bags, wrappers, packaging materials for candies, crackers, toothpaste, cosmetics, and thousands of other items that people use daily, end up in the oceans. In many places, because there are because they are materials that cannot be recycled, and there is no service to collect and dispose of the waste. Once the river device removes plastic trash from rivers in developing nations, what happens next? Many landfills in developing countries are places where garbage is openly dumped and not properly secured or disposed of. Winds and storms returns trash in unsecured landfills and from mountains of trash that are not secured properly back into the environment. Ensuring plastic waste is properly removed and buried or burned, such as in Sweden, where plastic is burned, used for energy, and where contaminants are captured as much as is possible, must be of no less of a priority than the removal of plastic trash. Otherwise, plastic trash will just return to the environment. Microplastics, synthetic clothing, the endless supply chain of plastic materials, and failure to keep them out of the environment needs to be addressed. No river device is capable of screening out microplastic particles and fibers. Plastic pollution is an enormous problem. Boyan Slat's river device is a step in the right direction, but it must be seen for what it is, one small part of what must become a comprehensive war against plastic pollution. Funding, technology, and volunteerism to the exclusion of employment only makes the plastic pollution problem worse. Proper collection of plastic trash and properly disposing of plastic trash must become a worldwide priority. Employed people must be at the forefront of the effort to remove plastic trash already in the environment. The plastic addiction must end. The companies that produce plastic or use it for their products must bear responsibility for the enormous cost of what plastic pollution inflicts upon the environment. Recycling is only of value if it keeps plastic pollution out of the environment. Thus far, decades of recycling have failed. Developed countries must stop shipping their plastic waste to developed countries must stop shipping their plastic waste to developing countries already drowning in their own plastic under the pretense of recycling. Unfortunately, the critical need to address poverty and plastic pollution by employing disadvantaged people continues to be ignored or dismissed. There is no device or machine that can go into mangroves, coastlines, and many other areas where only people can go and remove plastic pollution. Put river devices into rivers, ocean cleanup machines into ocean garbage patches, but do not continue failing to put people in the many plastic polluted areas where only people can go. And it should also be mentioned that many coastal areas get their plastic not only from the land, but also plastic returns from the oceans back into the coast. It's a never-ending process where plastic goes from the land into the oceans, from the oceans back into the land, always breaking down into smaller pieces. At some point, if plastic is not recovered by employed human labor from coastal areas, it will break down into pieces that are too small to ever be recovered, and then this plastic will be a forever source of plastic pollution, contaminating the environment, harming marine life and human health. Plastic pollution has become another feel-good cause, with people latching on to easy answers and inadequate solutions. Plastic pollution is a disaster. This man-made disaster, many years in the making, needs many interventions. It is a war that must be fought on many fronts. Unfortunately, people want to focus on feel-good, quick-fix interventions.